On May 20th, 1902, Cuba declared independence from the United States. Today we will discuss its history from its discovery to today. In 1492, Chris Columbus sailed the ocean blue. He discovered America. Discover meaning spread word of something most people didn't know, even though he didn't know it was a new continent. That was Amerigo Vespucci. And America meaning the Caribbean. Anyways, the Spanish came and colonized Cuba. The population grew. There were colonies, slaves, and sweet, succulent sugar. Then it was owned by Britain, but they gave it back. At the start of the 19th century, over 300,000 slaves arrived in Cuba. In 1817, Cuba's population was more than 500,000. Some of these people were Chinese. They were indentured servants. Cuba declared independence from Spain in 1868. However, Spain, the U.S., and other nations ignored it. Slavery was abolished 1 to 2 decades later. In the War for Independence in the 1890s, hundreds of thousands of Cubans died. Speaking of the 1890s, America is angry about their boat, so they blame it on Spain. They fight them and take a bunch of their land. Cuba became a protectorate from 1898 to May 20th, 1902, the start of the Cuban Republic. The U.S. still had some control over Cuba. They also owned
Guantanamo Bay.
In the late 1920s, Cuba's tourism grew. A lot of presidents and weird stuff happened, but it's not that significant. What is important is that in 1934, Fulgencio Batista rose to power. They had a new constitution. It was great. After his presidency, he moved to Florida in 1944. When he returned in 1952, he wasn't re-elected. So he did what any normal person would do. Start a coup. He suspended the constitution, revoked liberties, and sided with the wealthy. The U.S. supported him through this. He also banned the Commie Party. Tension grew because of Batista's dictatorship. He was forced into exile at the end of 1958. And why exactly was he forced into exile? Fidel Castro and his crew took over Cuba in January 1959. There was rebellion until 1966. Thousands of citizens were executed. At first, the U.S. supported Castro, but then he became a Commie! Relations soured, and there was a total trade ban. So they allied with the East. On April 14th, 1961, there was the disaster of the Bay of Pigs invasion. In October of 1962, the world almost ended with the Cuban Missile Crisis. By 1963, Castro was moving towards a full communist system. The U.S. tried to assassinate Castro 638 times. Cuba was in poor communist disaster. Things couldn't possibly get any worse. Right? After the USSR collapsed, guess what happened?
More economic downturn.
There was mass famine and riots. More recently, Cuba has aligned with China. In 2008, Fidel Castro resigned and put his brother Raul into power. During Obama's presidency, relations with Cuba were stabilized. Finally, on November 25th, 2016, Fidel Castro kicked the bucket. So that was basically the history of Cuba. I hope you enjoyed.